In a lot of ways, NASCAR is very similar to other sports, and one of those is the fun practice of saying, what if? What if something changed that would completely have ripple effects for 20 years after the fact? Well, today we're going to do that and ask the question, what if Brad Keselowski stayed at Hendrick Motorsports? Well, starting off, I think we need a bit of a backstory on this. In the late 2000s, Brad Keselowski was a top prospect for Hendrick Motorsports. He was the best guy ever at the time for JRM from 2007 to 2009, winning countless races, competing for championships, and all around looking like a future star in the making. He won the 2009 Aaron's 499 as well, while being a full-time nationwide series driver when he was racing at Talladega for Phoenix Racing. And he had a lot of promising runs in his 2009 campaign and Cup, both in the number 25 GoDaddy Chevrolet for Rick Hendrick, as well as that 09 car for Phoenix Racing. Overall, it was shaping up that he was going to be the next great superstar for HMS, the next guy to carry the mantle that Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson made so great. But ultimately, it didn't happen. Because of contracts, as well as Mark Martin coming back and Keselowski wanting a chance, he jumped ship and went to Team Penske, a team he stayed with for the majority of his career and had his greatest successes with. So we're going to look at, what if this didn't happen? What if the ride opened up in the Cup Series for Brad? Now, the catalyst for the ripple effect on Keselowski's career centers around one driver, Mark Martin. Mark Martin had a hell of a resurgence in 2009. Between 2006 and 2009, he had two part-time seasons where he competed for wins, ran up front, and ultimately looked like the great driver we all knew Mark was. Well, Rick Hendrick saw this, and he recruited Martin to drive the 5 car, the premier car of HMS. And in the first year, he scored 5 victories, competed for a championship, beating out Jeff Gordon, and just losing out to Jimmy Johnson in 2009. Due to this success, he was convinced by Rick Hendrick to stay for 2 more years and race the 5 back-to-back from 2010 and 2011. This is what forced Keselowski out of the stable, because Keselowski was looking to be the heir apparent to Martin in the 5, taking an extra year in the lower series so that he could hone his craft, let Martin have his one last shot at glory, and then jump in after the fact. There was also talks of Martin maybe having 2 part-time seasons in 2010 and 11 and helping coach a young driver like Keselowski. Ultimately, this didn't happen. Martin stayed in the car 2 more years, Keselowski jumped ship, and we have the current timeline. But let's say that they start with the original plan. Mark runs a full-time 2009 season and then chooses to only race a part-time season for Rick Hendrick in 2010. Keselowski agrees, knowing that he'll be under the tutelage of Mark Martin, one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history, who obviously showed he still knows how to win just as well as he ever did. That way, in 2011, Keselowski will go full-time in the Cup Series. He won't be a rookie because he's raced too much, but he'll be able to compete for a championship. And that season in 2010, he'll race full-time for JRM in the number 88 GoDaddy Chevy, and with that, he will probably become the first Xfinity champion for Dale Jr.'s team. Realizing, though, the process that's taking foot, I think that Martin actually would relinquish the car a year earlier than 2011, letting Brad have that ride for basically a rookie season. Much like in real life, Martin will go to the 55 car part-time, and Keselowski goes full-time in the 5, meaning that Kasey Kahne, after 2010, wouldn't have Hendrick Motorsports to look forward to, but there is an opening, the Blue Deuce in 2011. So the Budweiser driver would jump to the Miller Lite car in a funny turn of events. But with this, it made Kahne a perennial journeyman driver. And that's how his career would go from this point forward. No time in the 5, all to different teams, similar to what Elliott Sadler went through. Now, in 2011, this was Brad Keselowski's first full-time season. And I'm saying that in this season, HMS overall had struggled, that they only scored 5 wins. I don't think that changes much in this scenario. And I think by basically being a rookie with some extra steps, I think that generally Keselowski will at first perform how Martin did in 2011, which was not all that great. Now, I do think by the end of the year, he might even make the chase and put together a pretty good run. So overall, there's a lot of hope heading into 2012. But I probably think he's about 15 to 20th. A pretty solid season, better than his 2010 season with Penske, but not great. Now in 2012, this is when Keselowski arrives. In real life, he wins a championship, but I don't think that happens in this scenario. While in our timeline, he does this, I think in this instance, he's probably going to be second or third fiddle to Jimmy Johnson and Dale Jr. in 2012. Both of them were bad fast, and Johnson looked like his old championship-winning self. Furthermore, I do think he's going to go out and win multiple races in this season, and maybe even get a top 5 points finish. If Kasey Kahne could get that car to the top 5, Brad Keselowski certainly can. This season also may end up going to Michael Waltrip Racing's Clint Bowyer, maybe the Blue Deuce for Kasey Kahne, or Brad's teammate Johnson. What this is a catalyst for the next 3 years. From 2013 to 2015, Hendrick Motorsports was incredibly fast, and I think Keselowski takes full advantage of this. In our timeline, Keselowski was a very fast driver at this time too, but Hendrick was consistently the fastest week in and week out. I think by 2013, he's performing at the same level as Johnson. In 2014, I think he's keeping up with Gordon and Dale Jr. And in 2015, I think he's as confident and as consistent as Dale Jr., but with more wins. Not a far cry away from 3 seasons straight of 4 to 5 wins. And in my opinion, no doubt he'd get at least one championship in this time, no matter the format. Now, after this, though, when it's seeming like he's on top of the world, I think this is where we see a transition period. In 2016 and 17, HMS was transitioning in leadership. Jeff Gordon retired, Dale Jr. was hurt, and in my timeline here, Keselowski steps up as a veteran leader. As by 2017, he and Chase Elliott are the most competitive guys at HMS, while Dale Jr. is on his way out, and Jimmy Johnson, well, his fall from grace is beginning. This means that in the short term, Hendrick hits rock bottom like in real life in 2018. Hendrick is now much younger. Elliott is coming to his own in the 24. He's still there at this point. And Dale Jr.'s 88 Exalta Chevy is now vacant, but not taken over by Alex Bowman. Instead, by a rookie, William Byron. Jimmy Johnson is sank into mediocrity, and Keselowski has even had some diminishing returns. Chevrolet, for the first time in 25 years, looks very, very beatable in this timeline. And this leads to 2019, of course. And in my opinion, this is the big decision time for Keselowski. It's clear that Johnson is in the waning years of his career, and a youth movement is chomping at the bit. Keselowski needs to decide if he's going to be the veteran leader or move on to greener and maybe more entrepreneurial endeavors. Well, he chooses to sign a 1-year deal like he did with Penske to prolong the process. Having a better year in 2019, it also is clear that Hendrick and Chevy are recovering. Chase Elliott's rebranded 9 team is officially the top dog at Hendrick. Byron, now in the 24 with the 88 gone, is also starting to come into his own a little bit, but not as quickly as Elliott. And of course, you got Johnson in the 48 and the 5 car of Keselowski. With 2019's silly season, I think there's going to be a lot of moving. But I don't see him going to the Blue Deuce. I think the number 2 car at this point is driven by Ryan Blaney. There is still a good amount of teams left for Keselowski to choose from, but in my opinion, it boils down to 3 options, and they're all Ford options. The first one, go to the new number 12 team for Team Penske. It's a new team, but Penske has been coming into its own. They've gotten really good and established themselves as the top Ford team at this point. You could go maybe to Stewart-Haas Racing in the number 14. Bowyer might go out a year early for the booth. Maybe that's how it all ends out. But I also think that this team is really competitive after 2018. In real life, all 4 teams made the playoffs, and all 4 teams seem to be competitive enough to win races on any given week, which is a really good option. And then there's an intriguing one, the 17 car. While they don't offer a competitive ride, they do offer something intriguing for Keselowski. Keselowski is a person in NASCAR, a personality in general, who likes to give it back, who likes to add to the history of the sport. And how better of a way to do this than ownership? So, much like in real life, RFK would be a reality, and the number 5 car would be open for business in 2020 for free agents. Now, with him going to RFK early, it probably would lead to different changes. Maybe someone new in the 6 car, but overall, there's 5 major changes that would be so alien to us today with the way we see current NASCAR and NASCAR history. Number 1, well, the obvious. Keselowski being at Hendrick for a long time instead of Penske. Of course, then you got Mark Martin retiring early in 2012. Then you got Kasey Kahne. Kasey Kahne being a journeyman driver his whole career and never having the stability he had at Evernham ever again. Then you got Alex Bowman, more than likely not getting a ride at Hendrick Motorsports. That's a huge change. Maybe he gets one in 2020 with the 5 car open, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe at that point he's moved on and he's stuck in another ride. And then the other big one, the fact that after being let go from CGR, maybe Kyle Larson never goes to Hendrick. But ultimately, none of this happened. Keselowski went to Team Penske, won a championship, raced great, and now is at RFK in 2022. But it's pretty fun to think about, and now I'm going to pass it on to you for you to think about. What do you think would happen if Brad Keselowski had stayed at Hendrick longer? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support. And until next time, have a good one.